name is Tanya Edwards, and I am going to attempt to teach a lesson on cell organelles and give just a really brief summary of the functions of those organelles. This is going to be geared towards a 7th grade science course, and the standard is the function of a cell and organelles. But I'm only going to do the organelles because to do function of the cell as well will take up a lot of time. But I am going to do at the beginning of the lesson a quick review of some of the functions of a cell. So let's get started. All right, cell organelles. What is a cell? A cell is the smallest structure and functional unit of an organism. Cells are the building blocks of all living things. Together they do form things like tissues and organs. All living organisms are made up of cells. Organisms can be made of just a single cell and multi-cells like human body, plants, trees, birds. Cells provide structure, and cells also convert food into energy. Together they form things like tissues and organs. And a cell could either act alone like a bacteria. Cells can also work together. Well, independent cells, I guess I should say, can also work together to form an entity like slime or mold. I'm sure you all have heard about black mold. Okay. They come in all shapes and sizes. Number of cells may vary in individuals. Like I said before, you can have either single-celled organisms or multi-celled organisms. And cells contain little organelles that help them to function as well. We have two different types of cells. You'll have a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. The difference between the two is that a eukaryotic cell has a membrane-bound nucleus. A prokaryotic cell does not. Eukaryotic cells make up organisms such as plants or animals. They also make up some single-celled organisms like protozoa, some algae, and yeast. People don't really think of yeast as a living organism, but they do live. You also have a prokaryotic cell, like I said, does not have a nucleus, doesn't have that membrane for a nucleus, and they are single-celled, and they can be bacteria or archaeans. All right. So cells have specialized parts that help them function, and those will be your organelles. Okay. So here we have a diagram of the organelles contained in a cell. You have your nucleolus, nucleus, ribosomes, vesicles, rough endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, cytoskeleton, a smooth endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, vacuoles, cytosol, which is also, oh my goodness, cytoplasm. I'm sorry, cytoplasm. And also lysosomes, centrioles, and a cell membrane. Now let's start with the cell membrane. You'll always need something to keep everything inside of the cell. The cell membrane is that barrier. It is also known as the plasma membrane. It consists of a lipid bilayer as well as proteins, and it selectively allows materials to enter and to leave the cell. Next, you will have your cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance in which the organelles are embedded. Of course, you need something to hold the organelles, not so much as in place, but so that, think of a bag of marbles. If you didn't have something to keep things together, they'd be just rolling around in a bag of marbles, like a bag of marbles. Okay, next thing that we'll talk about is the nucleus. The nucleus is the largest of the organelles. It does have a double membrane. It's the control house of the whole cell, and it stores the cell's DNA. It's also responsible for all cellular reproduction. You can talk about the nuclear membrane as well. It's sort of like the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. It is there to help protect the nucleus and keep all the other organelles and any other substances out of the nucleus. Okay, next we'll talk about the nucleolus. Nucleolus are spherical bodies within the nucleus. Its primary function is transcribing ribosomal RNA, which is assembled with ribosomal proteins, which eventually is made into ribosomal subunits. Those subunits will eventually travel to the cytoplasm where they become complete ribosomes. The nucleolus also regulates the cell cycle, responds to cellular stress, and perform DNA repair. You also have your chromatin within the nucleus. Chromatin's functions are to compact the long strands of DNA so they are able to fit into the nucleus. They control gene expression, they protect DNA from damage, and they ensure that chromosomes properly divide during cell division. Okay. Now we'll talk about the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum is involved in the transportation of substances throughout the cell. It plays a primary role in the metabolism of carbohydrates, the synthesis of lipids, steroids, and proteins. The appearance of, the rough endoplasmic reticulum, as well as the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, are two separate organelles. The rough endoplasmic reticulum synthesizes, modifies, and folds and transports proteins. It gets its rough appearance from the ribosomes on its surface. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum does not have the ribosomes. Its primary responsibility is the synthesis of lipids and steroids. Also, it aids in detoxing poisons, drugs, and it functions in the storage of calcium ions. Now, the ribosomes that we talked about being produced are protein synthesizers. That's pretty much what they do. They are found on the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and they are also embedded in the cytoplasm. Remember the jelly-like substance. Okay, here we have the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus functions as a central hub for processing, sorting, and packaging proteins and lipids for transport. You have two vesicles that kind of aid in the transport of proteins and waste to exit the cell. First, let's start with the Golgi vesicle. The Golgi vesicle is how the proteins from the Golgi apparatus are transported. After modifying and sorting proteins, the vesicles bud off from the Golgi apparatus and carry their contents to the plasma membrane or mature into lysosomes. And we'll get into what lysosomes are in just a little bit. The secretory vesicles function is to transport molecules from the Golgi apparatus to the plasma membrane or the cell membrane for secretion from the cell through exocytosis. All right, now here are lysosomes. I think lysosomes are pretty cool. They are sort of like the garbage disposal of the cell. It is the cell's waste disposal and recycling system. They happen to break down waste products, cellular debris, and invaders such as bacteria and virus. Just think of them as like a Pac-Man. They sort of eat anything that may be harmful or that is harmful to the cell, and to get rid of waste, like it said, like cellular debris. Next, we have vacuoles. Vacuoles are membrane-bound sacs. That happen to have multiple functions. They function in storage and waste disposal. They are also extra protection for the cell, and they aid in growth. Okay, and here we have centrosomes. The main function of centrosomes is organizing microtubules and regulating cell division, shape, and polarity. Microtubules are organisms or organelles or material that work in the division of chromosomes, if you're wondering what those are. Okay, so now we have peroxisomes. Peroxisomes are involved in oxidation reactions. Fatty acids such as cholesterol are synthesized in peroxisomes. Okay. Now, intermediate filaments, they are structures that provide mechanical strength and stability to cells. They anchor the nucleus and other organelles, and they also form a scaffold for multiple cellular functions like cell growth, migration, and differentiation. My diagram didn't quite include it, but there are other um, two other organisms that work with the intermediate filament to help in the shaping and keeping the cell together. Okay. And last but certainly not least, we have the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is probably one of my favorite organelles. And I think it's because I love the fact that we think of the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell. And it's considered the powerhouse of the cell because it generates generates energy from food into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, through cellular respiration. Okay, so now we're back to the diagram. I am pretty much finished with the lecture. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to have you take your diagram that you picked up when you first walked into the room, pair up with your partner, fill out the diagram, and there also should have been a worksheet with the functions of each organelle. So maybe you can look over that and discuss that with your partners. All right, let's get started.